Hey guys, welcome back to Genealogy and Chronology. Today we are back to Middle Earth and we will be discussing about the complete Dwarven genealogy of J.R.R. Tolkien's works. I post 2 new videos each month concerning history, chronology and lore. Consider subscribing to my channel and also follow me on Reddit to find the high resolution copy of this poster. Please check out my other videos where I have discussed about the complete Elven and Edain genealogies, royal houses of Numenor, Arnor and Gondor, and also the list of chieftains of Dunedain and the list of stewards of Gondor. Let's move on to today's topic. Unlike the Eldar and Edain, dwarves were not creation of Eru Ilúvatar. Dwarves were created by Aule the Smith, who was one of the Valar. When Eru came to know that Aule had created the dwarves, Aule tried to destroy the dwarves, but Eru took pity over the dwarves and gave them life of their own. But Eru commanded that the dwarfs should not be awakened before the Eldar, and hence these dwarfs were made to sleep in various places of Middle-earth until the awakening of elves. Sometime after the elves were awakened in 1150 of the years of the trees, dwarfs were also awakened from their sleep. There were 13 dwarfs awakened, eldest of whom was Durin the First, and he was awakened alone. The other 12 dwarfs consisted of 6 dwarf fathers who were awakened along with their wives. While Durin awoke in Mount Gundabad, the dwarfs of Firebeards and Broadbeams were awakened in the Ered Luin, while the remaining 4 dwarf fathers and their wives were awakened somewhere in the east. We will first discuss about the dwarfs of Ered Luin. As mentioned earlier, the fathers of Firebeards and Broadbeams were awakened here. It is unclear if the dwarfs of these 2 houses mixed and intermarried, but they were collectively called as the dwarfs of Blue Mountains. They had 2 strongholds, Nogrod and Belgost. The only known lords of Belgost are Azaghal and Bordruith, and the only known king of Nogrod is Nogladur, who died in the hands of Beren. Some notable dwarfs from the Blue Mountains of East are Gamil Sirak and his student Telchar. Telchar is credited for forging the sword Narsil, which became the heirloom of Dunedain, and the sword Angris, which was used to remove one Silmaril from the crown of Morgoth. He is also credited for making the dragon helm of Dorlomin. During the War of Wrath, the dwarves from the Blue Mountains assisted the Valar, but their strongholds were destroyed. They moved back to Khazad-dûm and enriched the city, mixing and intermarrying with the Longbeards. Now we will discuss about the dwarves of the East. There were 4 dwarf fathers awakened in the east, and they would found the houses of Iron Fists, Stiffbeards, Blacklocks, and Stonefoots. We do not know any individual dwarfs from these houses because these dwarfs almost stayed in the east throughout all 3 ages. It is assumed that the dwarfs who assisted Morgoth in the first stage were from these 4 houses. Before we go back to discussing the line of Durin, let's discuss petty dwarfs. Petty dwarfs were exiles from the 7 dwarf houses. They were smaller in stature and would easily reveal their Kuzul names. These were the only dwarfs to cross Ered Luin and enter Beleriand. Most notable among the petty dwarfs is Mim and his 2 sons. Mim aided Finrod in the construction of Nargothrond, but he tried to kill Finrod, because of which he was banished from the Elven city. Later, Mim is found by Turin, who used his secret stronghold as a hideout. Mim later betrays Turin by revealing location of Turin to Morgoth. Few years later, when Turin's father Hurin is released by Morgoth, he comes across Mim and kills him for betraying his son. He then takes the dwarven necklace of Noglemir and gives it to Thingol, which again causes another dwarven-elven crisis. Now coming to Durin's line. Durin was awakened alone in Mount Gundabad. He travelled south until he reached the lake Miramir and saw his reflection in the lake, and above his head shone 7 stars. Durin decided that this would be his stronghold and moved into the caves right next to the lake. He named his city as Khazad-dûm. It is unclear who his wife was or whom he married. After Nogrod and Belgost were destroyed in the War of the Wrath, almost all the dwarfs moved to Khazad-dûm and enriched the city, mixing with Longbeards. Durin lived a very long life, spanning over many centuries. In fact, he lived for so long that he earned himself the name Durin the Deathless. It is presumed that he died in late first age, which makes him about 2400 years old at the time of his death, which is 10 times the age of an average dwarf. It is said that Durin would be incarnated 6 more times, and in fact, there came 6 more kings from the line of Durin who resembled Durin the First so much that the dwarfs thought it was Durin the First himself. Not much is known about Durin the Second, except that he lived sometime between late First Age and Second Age. It was during the reign of Durin the Third that one of the rings of power was given to him in 1500s of Third Age. This ring would pass down from father to son until Sauron recovered it from King Thrain II in late 2800s of Third Age. Again, not much is known about Durin the Fourth and Durin the Fifth. During the reign of Durin the Sixth, one of the Balrogs of Morgoth hiding beneath the mountain is awakened, and Durin the Sixth is slain by Balrog in 1980 of Third Age. His son King Nain the First is also slain by Balrog the next year. King Thrain the First leaves Khazad-dûm along with his people and establishes his kingdom in Erebor, becoming king under the mountain. But Thrain the First's son, Thorin the First, abandons Erebor and moves to Great Mountains. The next 4 kings from the line of Durin also took their seat in the Grey Mountains until the dragons started attacking their stronghold in 2570 of Third Age. In 2590, Thror leads his people back to Erebor and becomes king under the mountain. But just 180 years after moving back to Erebor, Smaug attacks Erebor and starts to reside there. Once again, the Durin's descendants are forced to flee, and this time they remove themselves to the Blue Mountains, under the leadership of Thror's son, Thrain II. Thror, with one of his companions, Nar, goes to Moria, despite many of his kindred asking him not to do so. In 2790, Thror is killed by Azog and mutilates his body in front of Thror's companion, Nar. When Nar comes to Thrain II with this news, Thrain II didn't speak for 7 days, and later he declared war upon the Orcs. Thus began the War of the Dwarfs and Orcs in 2793, and it lasted for 6 years. Dwarves from all 7 houses joined this war. Azog was slain by Dain Ironfoot of the Iron Hills. Even after defeating Orcs, the loss of life on the sides of dwarves was not less. Many dwarves went back to their homelands. Thus, Thrain II becomes the king of what remained of the Durin's folk in the Blue Mountains. In 2850, Thrain dies in the captivity of the Necromancer in Dol Guldur, and the Ring of Power which was passed on to him was recovered by Sauron. Before his death, Thrain II gave the key and secret map of Erebor to Gandalf. In 2941, Gandalf accompanies Thorin's company in their quest of Erebor, and the hobbit Bilbo Baggins is also recruited as a burglar. Thorin, his nephews Fili and Kili, and his distant cousins Ori, Nori, Dori, Balin, Dwalin, Oin, Gloin, Bifur, Bofur, and Bombur join in his quest of Erebor along with Bilbo and Gandalf. It is during this quest that Bilbo finds the One Ring of Sauron after Gollum accidentally lost it. Later, Thorin's company reaches Erebor, where the Smaug is awakened from his sleep. In his fury, he destroys the lake town of Dale. After Smaug is killed by Bard, the elves of Mirkwood under King Thranduil and the people of Lake Town under Bard come to Erebor to claim their stake in the treasures of Erebor for the damages done by Smaug. Thorin refuses to give them any share, but Bilbo slips out of Erebor and hands over the Arkenstone to Bard and Thranduil. Thorin's cousin Dain Ironfoot arrives with his people from the Iron Hills and challenges the elves and men if they dare to harm Thorin's company. Gandalf intervenes and informs them of the goblins of Misty Mountains coming to attack them. Soon the goblins start pouring out of the hills and begin to attack the assembled armies. This battle is known as the Battle of the Five Armies, which ended with the Eagles saving the day once again. Thorin and his nephews, Fili and Kili, are killed. Thorin's cousin, Dain Ironfoot, is crowned king under the mountain. Dain Ironfoot's grandfather, Gror, had established Iron Hills after the dragons started attacking Durin's folk in Grey Mountains. Gror was succeeded by his grandson, Dain Ironfoot, because his son Nain was slain in the War of the Dwarves and Orcs in 2799. In 2989, Balin with few companions goes to Moria to reclaim his ancestral home of Khazad-dûm. He was joined by Ori, Oin, Nali, Frar, Loni and Foli. They were successful in taking the eastern gate and lived in Moria for 5 years until they were overrun by orcs and the whole company perished by 2994. Gloin from Thorin's company joins the Council of Elrond along with his son Gimli in 3018 of Third Age. Gimli is chosen as one of the members of the Fellowship to represent the dwarves. Gimli goes on to play a major role in many parts during the War of the Ring. Meanwhile, in Erebor, the forces of Sauron attack the Lake Town. Dane Ironfoot at age 250 wields his axe, and even as his contemporary King Bran, grandson of King Bard, dies in the battle, he steps on Bran's body, slaying any orc which dare touch his friend's body. Thus passed away the king under the mountain and the lord of the Iron Hills. He was succeeded by his son, Thorin III Stonehelm. It is said that it was the son of Thorin III or one of his grandsons who would become Durin the Seventh, last of Durin's incarnations, and that he re-established the seat of king in Khazad-dûm, where all the kindred from all houses of dwarves prospered. Meanwhile, Gimli established his colony with the leave of King Eomer and became the lord of the Glittering Caves in Rohan. After King Elessar passed away in 120 of 4th Age, Legolas built a small boat in Ithilien and left Middle-earth along with Gimli and passed over the sea, never to be seen again by anyone in Middle-earth. I hope you all liked this video of the complete known dwarven genealogy of Tolkien's works. Be sure to join me as I will be sharing a new video every second and fourth Sunday right here. All my posters are freely available on Reddit and Twitter. If you like my work, consider supporting me on Patreon. All Patreon members are eligible to receive watermark-free soft copies of my posters. Thank you.